Hello everyone, we are here for the live draw of the Mordheim Faction Chronicles tournament. And first off, just wanting to start off with a little bit of information here. Gonna see if the stream is up. It's been acting a little bit weird for me. YouTube connected with XSplit, which is the one I am using. It seems like we are online, and gonna go ahead and forward all of the relevant there we go. And yes, I am sorry that apparently the name is Mordheim Madness 2 live draw. I'm trying to change it, it's not possible. Whatever, let's go. So first of off I want to start off here with these four little squares. And hired swords, we have updated the rules a little bit. So instead of just having the Possessed Augur, Youngblood, Witch Hunter Hero, Night Runner and Dreg available for use as a hired sword, you can use them for the first 4 games, and after that you get more options. So it's cycle 2, which is PvP 5 to 8. You can also buy all leaders from the hired swords, including heroes that you put the Born Leader skill on. At cycle 3 you can use all the henchmen, including if you bring them to Lads Got Talent. And at cycle 4, which is the last 4 PvP games, you can use whatever hired swords you want. Remember, with Warband management you can only use, the leader can use the consumables as usual. You can use whatever characters you want to start with. You can even buy the characters that cost 0 gold. Always check that you have the correct amount of PVs before playing a PvP, etc, etc. And same thing with setting up a PvP game, just rehashing the rules here and what you're not allowed to do, which I thought was good to include here. You cannot play the story missions, you cannot use or buy illegal hired swords until you are at the correct cycle. You cannot reroll the save file. To be honest, I think that for the first mission, if your first PvE, before you play a PvP, if it goes badly for you, you have a bad market, just reroll, like who's gonna know. So that's fine, but not after you started playing the PvPs. And you cannot quit the PvP before going below the morale route threshold. That's gonna be very important. So with that underway, let's get ready to rumble. First of all, I want to say thank you very much to everyone who has signed up. This is gonna be the biggest Mordheim tournament to date. It's actually super big right now, and it can grow still. If you're not part of the first part of the tournament, you can join in at a little later stage after the first 4 PvE games, PvP games even. So it's gonna be really fast. And here we go then. So we have a little bit of specific setup for the draw. I'm gonna go through that. First of all, let's look at the website here. If you wanna join in on the tournament, just click the Discord on the tournament website for Mordheim Faction Chronicles, and you can just join in and you will be selected into one of the teams that are there. You can also find all the rules here, and you can find the deployment card. I'm gonna put more links here that you can use, and you can just quickly go to round 1 of 4, and you can see here match 1, and then it's gonna see match 2, match 3, match 4, and you can see who you're gonna match up to as well as the tournament starts. Important to keep a little bit of track of this one. Before we go on with the actual draw, let's take a look at the team rewards. Remember that the Faction Chronicles here is going to be all about the team, and you are together trying to get as many really nice rewards as possible. Let's start out with Sisters of Sigmar, which have this card. So as you can see, there are 5 levels here. If they complete the first level, if that means if they get 1 Crush the Will, 1 Wordstone Rush and 1 Marked for Death, they have this first bonus available to them. And it's really standard here. Completing Wordstone Rush or Marked for Death counts as either objective. That means if you complete Wordstone Rush, you can count it as a Marked for Death, and so forth. So that means that they can choose whichever one they want, giving them a lot of flexibility. They also get to deploy by the wagon on deployment known as Vision of Dread. They have a one use only reward, which they get at level 3 here, where they get all of their henchmen are allowed to use unlimited healing for 1 game, and then they play an extra PvE at that point. At level 4, their opponents cannot pick any map from the Nobles district without their consent. So that's really powerful. Bringing them into the Merchants district, which really favors comet spamming and such. And then you can add Temple of Sigma to the map pool of every game. If your opponent picks this map, you get to decide deployment, which is very powerful. Otherwise, it's random, and gameplay is always set to none, so everyone can cast spells there. And it's gonna look a little bit like this once you start completing it, and you can see all of this on the tournament webpage. You can see here that they have completed the first level, so it's green. You can see that they have completed 2 Wordstone Rush, 1 Crush the Will, and 1 Marked for Death. That's why they level up. You need 1 of each kind. With that underway, let's look at the Mercenaries card before we get underway here. The Mercenaries have a little bit of a different thing here. They can start out with setting the objective to random once they reach level 1, and every time they happen to come across Wordstone Rush in that case, it counts as completing 2 Wordstone Rush objectives, so they get a little bit of a speed boost. They can pick their own starting position on the Pillagers deployment. That is the deployment where one team starts in the buildings and one team starts surrounding the buildings, so they can choose whichever suits them best. When it comes to the one use only reward, they can decide upon a single consumable as a consumable type. Their entire team can then pick one of that consumable for the next PvP game, and then they play an extra PvE. So if you want, you can pick Healing Draught, and then every character in your whole team can carry 1 Healing Draught into that game. At level 4 here, Mercenaries can hire hired swords at a full cycle ahead of our warbands. At cycle 2 they can hire all the henchmen. At cycle 3 they can hire anything they want. So they can get all of their hired swords in much faster, and this is really important for them. It's going to give them a big power boost. As well, at level 5 here, your opponents gets to veto 1 deployment less, and you get to veto 1 deployment more. That means they get to veto 4 deployments, and you get to veto 6 deployments, if you remember correctly. So that's a really powerful boost for the Mercenaries. Let's go through to the Witch Hunters. Then we see if you have any nice comments here as we go on. No webcam, so unprofessional. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. So let's go on with the Witch Hunter card. They have, during an objective victory, they can count the objective as Crush the Will, and this is very powerful. If you're unfamiliar with what an objective victory actually is, an objective victory means that you complete the secondary objective, but you lose the game. Then you get an objective victory. And obviously Crush the Will is going to be the most harder thing to acquire here for every single team. So this is a nice boost to getting their levels up. They always deploy by the wagon on the catch deployment. That means that the opposing team will always be spread out in 3 groups if that deployment is picked. As their one use only reward, they get to use unlimited fire bombs on all of their characters. So let the fire rain begin in that game. At level 4 they can add 2 firebombs to 1 character or 1 firebomb to 2 separate characters, and this is excluding whatever the leader brings. So they get more consumables than any other warband as long as they are 2 firebombs. And at level 5, a very interesting thing here, they can decide if both players should play with 4 or 5 henchmen. It applies the same, either both players play with 4 henchmen or both players play with 5 henchmen. But if the Witch Hunter players decide that it's going to be 4, then they can use the 5th henchman slot anyway and use a level 0 henchman. So they will always outnumber their opponent if they pick that choice. Let's go through with the Cult of the Possessed card here quickly. You're going to see all of these cards on the tournament webpage, so don't worry, and you can also see that on the Discord. If you set the objective to random, every time Marked for Death comes up, it counts as completing 2 Marked for Deaths. So it's a little bit similar to the Mercenaries, it's just for Marked for Death instead. They have an interesting ability on number 2 that your opponents cannot veto Hunters and Prey, so you can play around with your warband a little bit about that if you really like this deployment choice. As the one use only reward, they get to play on Palace of Count Gotthard on random deployment and no gameplay, and they play an extra PvE as everyone else. At level 4, all the cult players can add a demon of their choice to 2 of their remaining PvP games. And that includes, naturally, the Chaos Augur as well if they want. And they can use this at any point, even in the playoffs. This is good if you feel that you're an underdog coming into a game, and then you can just bring in a demon and hope that that helps swing the battle around. And for level 5, they can decide to play the game on full random map and deployment. No team reward can prevent this from occurring, and just skipping the veto system. So they can just decide that we're gonna play a full random game and that's it, skipping everything else. Skaven coming up next. We only have 2 warband cards left. Skaven has completing any objective on scavengers or the catch counts as completing 2 objectives of that kind. So obviously they want to try and get those deployments, and it's up to the opponents to try and veto those deployments if they can. At level 2, in the ambush deployment, Skaven will always be the ambusher if they get to that level. At level 3, they get to play on the Quace side for 1 game and they play an extra PvE. Level 4, they can change the turn timer from 90 seconds to 45 seconds, making every game very hectic against the Skaven, just as it should be. And at level 5, they add sneak attack to the deployment selection of every game. That means we have 11 deployment selections when you're playing Skaven if they reach this level. And they will always be the sneak attacker here as well, so they have a distinctive advantage in that case. And for the last one, the Undead card, bringing in here, and they have an interesting ability for the first level here is for every 3 impressives that the Undead players slay in PvP, 1 marked for that objective is completed. Screenshots are required, so they can get marked for that a little bit easier than some of the other warbands. They also get to pick their own starting position on the deployment known as Horrors of Mordheim if they want to. That's 3 groups or scattered, so they get to choose whichever they want and the opponent gets the other one. They get to play on the middle bridge for 1 game if they want to and play an extra PvE after that game. At level 4, they can use the leader's consumables and share them with the other members of the warband, and I think this is a very powerful ability. If you get 12 strength onto your leader, which is likely to be a vampire, you can just decide to just use 3 consumables on him and use the other 3 on your other heroes. Remember that all of the henchmen of the undead cannot use consumable by default. And they have a similar ability to the witch hunters that you can play around with. They can decide if you should play with 3 or 4 hero slots for both players. And if you decide upon 3, then you can fill the 4th hero slot with a level 0 henchman, also outnumbering your opponent. So that is it. Let's see if we have any comments on this thing. Not so much, but yeah, the demon hunt can be really interesting indeed. I really like that part. So let's start off with the draw, and as you know, I have put out the layout of the draw and how it's going to be done. So we're going to start with the team captains, and team captains doesn't really mean too much. It means that this is the strongest player of your team, most likely. They might not contribute the most. Remember that this is a weighted tournament, so all the top players are going to face the top players, and if you're struggling, you're going to face only other struggling players. So hopefully we'll have all the games be very even here. But the team captains can, of course, help you out with planning out your warband. They can answer any question that you have any relating to builds and how to approach the game in as an efficient manner as possible. And if you want more tips, you can always ask me, Karen, as well. With that in mind, let's start off with this whole draw. So let's see, we're gonna start out with Killenpaw or Nanashi. So we're gonna have a little bit of a random draw, and it's gonna work out like this. I'm gonna click on this and we're gonna have a die spin around, and that is the team that they go to unless they have vetoed that. I'm gonna be really clear with which warbands each player has vetoed, and we're gonna go down from seeding group 1 to seeding group 2 and then seeding group 3 until we have all the players listed. So let's start out with a random procedure here and see which player is going to be first. It's going to be Nanashi. So let's roll which team Nanashi ends up with. Nanashi is a good player who has really surprised in the Bodyhood Brawl League and is good in league play. So we're going to see who is going to have him, which team he is going to lead. And remember, he has banned Undead. Thankfully he did not get Undead here. He is the team leader of the Witch Hunter team. So Witch Hunters, Nanashi Witch Hunters, which is the team he plays in the Bodybuild Brawl League as well, I believe. Let's start off with the second player, Kiddenpaw. Kiddenpaw he has vetoed Skaven, so he cannot end up as Skaven. So if we roll a 2, we're gonna re-roll that, and he can also not roll a 6 because Nanashi is already the team leader at that. Let's see. No, he's not gonna be Skaven. So let's re-roll this. He's not gonna be Witch Hunters either. He is going to be Cult of the Possessed. So he is going to be the team leader of Cult of the Possessed. Very exciting this. Another player coming up. Let's see who that is. And all the other team captains, they have decided not to veto a warband, so they can end up in any point. The only thing we have here is that Clyde has requested to play with his fellow player called Shellproof from the seeding group 2. So if we draw Clyde, we're gonna put Shellproof into the same team as well. Both of them are Polish, and I agree that if any player wants to do that, that is what I would allow. So let's see who comes next. It's going to be Hole Poker. Let's see what kind of team Hole Poker gets. So 2, 3, 4 or 5. Cannot be Witch Hunters, cannot be Cult of the Possessed. He can be Mercenaries, so he's gonna lead the Mercenaries team. Next player coming up, we are gonna see what that is. That is Rarator. He is a very good player as well. Might not be as strong as Hole Poker, but he's really good in this kind of play, and he has gotten more and more experienced as we go along. Rarator is going to play in Skaven. Rarator is going to go to Skaven. Oh wow, I did something wrong there. There we go. Rarator. Skaven. That means we only have 2 players left, which is Ainir and Clyde. Let's see who comes up. It is Clyde. So Clyde, remember, Shellproof going to the same team. Let's see which team that is. Sisters of Sigmar or Undead. We cannot have that. 3 or 4. 3 or 4. And Ainir is going to be captain of the team that is not picked here. 4, so he's going to be Sisters of Sigmar. And that means that we have Ainir going to be Undead. And we can already take out Shellproof from the equation and put him as Sisters of Sigmar. See if we have any comments about that. Seems like people are a little bit happy with the choices that they have gotten. So we're gonna roll on to seeding group 2. And here we have some special cases, and we're gonna start out with those 2 special cases. They are Chris Cardiac and Paranoia. And due to the amount of games that people have put in, and in the interest of making sure that all the teams have the same amount of games among all of their players, we're gonna start with these 2 players. And that's Chris Cardiac and Paranoia. And neither of these 2 players can end up with Witch Hunters, which they have both vetoed, Hole Poker's team or Rarator's team. That means that they will go to Undead or to Cult of the Possessed. So we're gonna start out with one of these players. Let's see, Chris Cardiac or Paranoia. And whoever gets into Undead or Cult of the Possessed, the other one is gonna go into the other one. Needless to say. So we're going to start out with Chris Cardiac. So Chris Cardiac gets Cult of the Possessed or Undead, and Paranoia is going to get the other warband then. 1 or 3. Chris Cardiac, you are going to be in the Undead team. And that means that Paranoia, you are going to come and join Kiranpa's team. Next up we have Pharaoh85, I believe, that we need to roll for, and he cannot get into the Witch Hunters team, meaning that he is going to join Skaven or Mercenaries. So let's see whichever one that is. Cannot join that. 2 or 5. No, that was a 5. Sorry. Very sorry. So he is going to join the Mercenary team. And then we have Quist, who cannot join the Undead, which is fine. He is also a player that has vetoed some of the warbands, so he can end up with the... Yeah, he is going to end up with Skaven or the Witch Hunters, and that means that Greybush is going to end up with the other team. So let's see wherever Quist ends up. 2 or 6? 6. Let's see if I can find Quist here. Moving Quist to the Witch Hunters team, and that means that Greybush, you end up with Skaven, which I think is your main team, if I remember correctly. We have no more comments, it seems. Next up, we have an interesting situation here, which is Andra93, that we are going to be forced to seed first here, and he has a very special thing as well. He cannot end up with the Undead team, which he has vetoed. He cannot end up with Holpoker's team, Paranoia's team, Rarator's team, or Chris Cardiac's team, which is quite a lot of teams here. That means that he can only end up with Witch Hunters or Sister of Sigmar. So Witch Hunters or Sisters of Sigmar for Andra93. Let's see whichever that is. That is a 4 or a 6. And the interesting thing here is that we have 2 players that are going to join the other team, which is Jackal and Aethreus. I'm going to talk about that in a little while here. So Andra93, you're going to join Sisters of Sigmar. And that means that Jackal and Atreus, and I put these 2 players together because they are the 2 players that have allowed for the least amount of games so far. They have 5 and 8 games that they have committed to, so together they make a passable player along everyone else. Next up, we are going to roll Marlos, which cannot end up together with Chris Cardiac's team. So he cannot end up as Undead, but he can end up as Mercenaries, Cult of the Possessed, or Skaven. So let's see wherever he ends up with. That's already picked. That is... not possible. You could not end up with Chris Cardiac, but you end up with Kiranpa and Paranoia. Now we're coming up to the players that do not have the DLC warbands, and from here on out there is no specific kind of seeding. We can fill up a team very quickly, and that's going to be that. But we're gonna start out with the players here that cannot end up with the DLC warbands because they don't have them. And first off on that score is gonna be Terminator, who is the only player that doesn't have the Witch Hunters warband or the Undead DLC, and he has also vetoed Sisters of Sigmar, so he only has 3 available warbands that he can get. Let's see where he ends up. Cannot pick that team, but he cannot end up there either. He's gonna end up with the Skaven. So Terminator, you're going to the Skaven team. Next up, we have another player here with lacking some DLCs, which is Real Steiner. He cannot end up with the Witch Hunters team, which he lacks the DLC from, but he has the Undead one. And he has vetoed Sisters of Sigmar, so he's not going to end up with them either. Ending up with Cult of the Possessed. And last of the players that lack the DLCs is Spix Talon. Spix Talon he is lacking the Undead DLC, and he has vetoed the Cult of the Possessed, so he cannot get a 1 or a 3. Let's see where he ends up. 5, he ends up with the Mercenaries. Alright. I think that's going to be a really good team for you, Spix Talon. I have gotten some indications that Kirenpaw, Holpoke and Raritor might be excellent captains and help out all of the new players. Of course, Nanashi, Clyde and Einar is going to do a lot as well, I assume. And right here, right now, we have gotten half of the players into their respective groups, and it's looking pretty good so far. Let's see if we have any comments here. Not too much that is worth bringing up. Let's start out then. So now we have 8 players that we can randomly select, and they have vetoed a warband from the seeding group 3. And these are Bubs, Asaro, Granas, V-Fender, Stormraven, Calimero, Rotenda and Fletcher that we're going to randomly distribute among these teams. So let's see who gets to be selected first. It is Calimero. Calimero has vetoed the Mercenaries team, so he cannot end up there. Let's see where he ends up instead. At number 3, so he joins the Undead. Calimero, you're joining the Undead team. Next up, we are going to have Stormraven, and Stormraven has vetoed Cult of the Possessed, so he cannot end up with them. Let's see where he goes. He goes to team number 4, which is Sisters of Sigmar. Next up, we have, let's see whichever player comes up. It's Bubs. Bubs has vetoed Sisters of Sigmar, so he cannot join them. Let's see where he goes. He goes to the Undead team. Bubs filling out the Undead team. Almost getting full here, Sisters of Sigmar and some other warbands. A little bit light on the Witch Hunters and Skaven so far. Next up we have Granas, and Granas has vetoed the Skaven, so he cannot end up with the Skaven team. Let's see where he goes. Not too Skaven. He is going to join the Mercenaries team. See if I can find him. There we go. Have some players left here. Let's see who comes up next. It is Asaro. Asaro, you have vetoed Skaven, so you cannot end up with them. Instead, he joins Sisters of Sigmar, almost completing that team. Can only have 1 more players among the Sisters of Sigmar. Asaro is an old player. He used to play in some of the tournaments way back in 2016, just coming back for the game now. Really interesting and nice to have you back. Okay, let's see here. We have other players coming up. It's gonna be Fletcher next. Fletcher has vetoed Cult of the Possessed. Gonna roll, see if he ends up with some team. He ends up with the Skaven team. Fletcher joins the Skaven team. Don't really have too many players left here in the group now that has vetoed a warband. Gonna start out with the next player, which is V. Fenrir. V. Fenrir coming up. V. Fenrir has vetoed Cult of the Possessed. Lots of people in the seeding group 3 has vetoed Cult of the Possessed. It's one of the most vetoed warbands, to be honest. It's Mercenaries has only one veto, and then it's mostly Sisters of Sigmar or Witch Hunters, and especially Cult of the Possessed. Lots of people have vetoed Cult of the Possessed. Let's see where V. Fenrir ends up. He ends up with the Undead team. Undead team for V. Fenrir. Almost completing that team as well then. That means that we only have one player left that we haven't sorted out, which is going to be indeed Rotenda. Rotenda has, like so many other players, vetoed Cult of the Possessed. Let's see where he ends up. Could potentially complete the Undead or the Sisters of Sigmar team here, but he does not. He joins the Skaven team. Rotenda joins the Skaven team. And now we have 10 players left. Only 10 players left, and these are Quizshu, Sassy Assassin, Dissolution, Valentine, Votan 5, Yarok, Sneaky High Elf, Abaddon, Slanemore, and Dig. And these are players from the seeding group 3 that have decided not to veto a single warband. So we're gonna see where they end up. We have lots of various openings left over here for the various teams. Let's quickly check some of the comments. Welcome aboard, Storm Raven, says the team leader Clyde. Nanashi is still a little bit worried here about which team members he's gonna end up. V. Fenrir is pretty happy about the Undead team, and this looks pretty nice. So let's go with the other players that we have not gotten to set up and see if we can finish off some of these teams right away. We're gonna start out with Slanemore. Slanemore, which team do you end up with? He is a player that played in the Mordheim Madness Season 1, where he won one of the games before going out of the tournament in a level 10 tournament. It's nice to have him back. And he is going to join the Mercenaries team. Mercenaries team gets Slanemore. It's a good catch. It's a good player. We have a lot of pretty good players here that we know a lot about, like Abaddon, Valentine, Dig. For instance, they have both played in various tournaments and they have a lot of experience, and it would be good for every team to get these players. But first off, see if they come up. It's Sneaky High Elf's turn. Sneaky High Elf to be selected for. Let's see where he ends up. Number 2, that completes the Skaven team. Sneaky High Elf, you are going to join the Skaven team, meaning that the Skaven team is completed, and that is the team that you have the most experience with, I believe, since you played that in the Bodyhood Brawl League as well. And that is the Skaven team: Rarator, Greybush, Terminator, Fletcher, Rotenda, and Sneaky High Elf. Hope that's gonna be a dangerous lineup for all the other players. Let's see who comes up next. And it's Dig. And Dig, he is a good player. He is someone that every team wants to have, I believe, especially as one of the one from the seeding group 3. Let's see where he can end up. He's gonna join the Witch Hunters. Dig is gonna join the Witch Hunters with Nanashi and Quist. Good lineup. Next up we have Abaddon. Abaddon, a player with lots of experience with the Bodyhood Brawl League, but not so much in the other tournaments. Let's see where he can end up. He could be a nice asset as well for some players, and he's gonna finish off the Mercenaries team here, Abaddon. He is going to join a lineup here led by Hullpoker of Pharaoh 85, Spix Talon, Granas, Slanemore, and Abaddon. And by that, we also have, remember that the teams opposed to each other here, they're gonna face each other. And so Hullpoker, you're gonna face off Rarator in the first game, Nanashi against Ainur, Clyde against Kid and Paw, Then you have Paranoia versus Shellproof, Faro 85 versus Greybush, Chris Cardiac versus Quist, and so forth. And all the other players we're going to randomize because we're going to have one player that's going to have a bye in the first game. We're going to see who that is first. Let's continue on. We have Votan 5 coming up. Time for him to be selected for. Joining Cult of the Possessed. Cult of the Possessed. Not too many spots left now. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players left as we go with Dissolution. Dissolution, a new player coming in here. Hopefully he can cause a lot of chaos. He cannot join that team. His team is full. But he can finish off the Cult of the Possessed team. He can definitely do that. So there we have it. Kid and Paul leading Paranoia, Marlos, Real Steiner, Votan 5 and Dissolution. Very nice. Next up we have Sassy Assassin. Let's see where he goes. To the Witch Hunters team. To the Witch Hunters team. It's good, they need a few more players. Let's see, we only have, right now we have Chrishu, Yarok and Valentine left. Chrishu, Varrock and Valentine, and first out of those is gonna be Yarok. Yarok, you cannot join that team. You cannot join that team either. But you can finish off the Sisters of Sigmars. That is something you can do. Very nice lineup here. Clyde, Shellproof, Ander 93, Stormraven, Asaro and Yarok. That means we only have 2 players left. That is going to be Chrishu and Valentine. And they're going to go to one of the DLC warbands. We're going to start off and see. It's going to be Chrishu that gets the role. And Valentine is going to go to the other team. So let's see which team he goes to. 3 or 6? 3, he goes to the Undead team. Chrishu to the Undead team, a team that he also has some experience with, and that means that Valentine, you are going to finish off with the Witch Hunters led by Nanashi and Quiz Jackal and Atreus, Dig, Sassy Assassin and Valentine, and the Undead team led by Ainur with Chris Cardiac, Calimero, Bubs, Vfender and Chrishu. And that is more or less it for this draw here. Let's try and bring in some players if they want to speak a little bit. If so, you can join the Mordheim Faction Chronicles and the voice chat and you will be here live. Let's see if we have any players that want to talk about their team or about how everything went. No players coming in to speak with us. Hello, Kid and Paul, leader of the Cult of the Possessed team.
I'm excited.
You're excited?
Paranoia is quite an educator as well, if you've ever been on the forums. So, who do you think looks strongest? I'm curious, just from an outside perspective.
Off the bat, I would say the Sisters of Sigmar looks pretty strong. I think their team rewards are a little bit less. I've thought about that. I think the others have better team rewards, but Clyde and Shellproof are a powerful combination, and Asaro and Stormraven coming back to the game could be really good here for the seeding group 3 as well. Otherwise, I really like the Mercenaries team too. I think they can cause a lot of havoc. Not a lot of people know this, but Granas has a lot of hours on Mordheim. He plays a lot of games. I've bothered him to join tournaments for the last 5 tournaments now, and now finally he comes in. And then we have Slainmore, Abaddon, 485 and a whole poker. It's a good team.
Yeah. I'm looking at them all. They all look pretty well rounded, so I'm excited. I'm going to hop back out here.
We have someone else that wants to speak. Stormraven, maybe? We don't hear you, but Sneaky High Elf. Welcome.
There. No, but that was lucky, wasn't it? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Speaking for the Skaven team.
Squeak, yes.
Squeak, nice to get a team that you're very familiar with.
Yeah, it's the team that I played the most.
Yeah, that's really good. It's gonna do you a lot of experience counts for a whole lot of things here, and knowing all the abilities that you can use with the team and the combinations. And you have a good leader as well. And Greybush is very experienced with the Skaven team.
Cool, excellent. Well, it will be fun.
I hope it will be really fun. I think you have a good chance there with this Skaven team. It looks very nice, and
Sure.
hopefully you guys can build a little bit around your team rewards and play the strategy game here.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I want to go into a tunnel. I'd say cheerio to you.
Cheerios.
Okay, bye-bye.
Alright, I'm not sure there are any more players that are gonna join us at this point. I hope you enjoyed this cast, and going to the Discord channel, I'm gonna open up individual chat rooms for each of the teams that only the team members have access to. They are the only ones that can see the messages there. They're the only ones that can write messages there. So you have a little bit of a private space to hash out all of the strategy details. And I'm pretty much going to get the first run of matches up, so you know who your opponent is. I'm gonna do that right away as well, and randomly draw out a player that gets a bye that don't get to play on the first round. So start up your teams, play your first PvE, and enjoy yourself. We're gonna have for the first game, you're gonna have until the 20th to finish it, so you have a little bit more time for the first game than all the other games coming up. Remember, it's going to be one game per week, and if you can't play on one of the weeks, you need to tell me before Monday morning, otherwise you're going to be seeded and you don't want to leave a walkover to someone. And we're getting the few extra days here because it's going to be interesting for you all, and really decisive to plan out your warband. Remember that you're gonna pick 10 team members right from the start, and you want to pick some that's gonna be good at the end of the tournament. As you know, if you count out the XP that you can get from this, I think if you play some of the normals, hards in the beginning when it's difficult, and then start going on brutals for almost every mission, you should reach level 10 with pretty much every single character, and then you get the hired swords on top of that for some variation. So plan out your warband, and we're gonna start the second PvE on the 21st of January, and the list is gonna be up very soon. Hope you enjoyed watching this, and yeah, when is the end date of the tournament? Well, we're gonna have 16 weeks straight from here. We're not gonna stop, and no player can drag this tournament out. And then I'm gonna give around I think 2 to 3 weeks per semi-final is a nice way of running it off, and then the final another. So 5 weeks after that. So 21 weeks starting from next week forward. So you can count out the dates. I'm gonna count it myself and post it online. Any more questions before we end this draw? No more questions then. Alright, so thank you all for watching and enjoy playing in this tournament. Hope we're gonna have some more players coming in as well, joining your teams, and just have fun. This is the biggest tournament ever, and I'm going to make a personal commitment to try and cast each and every one of you players at least once, so you get up on YouTube as well, and I'm gonna be very nice. So go make your warbands and enjoy. Thank you for watching.